vi koji još uvijek niste izašli iz sale, pošto ovaj termin je obično takav da skoro niko ne ostane, ali što se tiče onih koji su ostali u sali, mislim da će biti jako zanimljivo i interesantno. Green construction, green development i real estate in general. Mislim da sa nama imamo više nego kvalifikovane sagovornike. Ja ću početi sa ove strane. Adir Elal, direktor AFI Europe Srbija. Kruno Santini, direktor Inditech Grupa za Sloveniju, Hrvatsku i Srbiju. Marko Brekić. Marko, please, I hope I'm going to put everything right. It's Executive Director for Commercial Real Estate of Erste Group, Vienna. Did I do anything wrong? No? It's okay. I Peđa Petronijević, član upravnog odbora GTC SA. Ovo mi je bilo najlakše da zapamtim. The discussion will be in English because Adir speaks English better than Serbian, although I'm not really sure. I'm quite positive he speaks Serbian very good. And the topic is going to be the real estate market, the classes, the assets, the green developments. And I could hardly find more qualified people to talk about this. Yes, we have developers. Yes, we have business people who are also doing real estate. And I'm greeting all of them who are interested in this topic here, as well as all other participants of this panel. And what I'd like to say is that I'm pretty sure that we will be try to covering challenging and interesting topics. I do expect differences in opinions, not only to me, as we discussed previously, but even between the panelists. And before we move on, I would just like to say something. We had a pretty much fully prepped panel before we moved in here. Lunch, discussed almost all topics. So we know what we are looking into. We did not agree on everything, and I hope we will be able to portray these kind of differences of understandings and opinions about certain issues. But on the other side, I have to say that we've reached a common agreement that the purpose of this panel is to be, to a certain extent, provoking, to invoke thinking, and to start opening questions which I believe are very interesting at this point of time. I will start with one which is aimed at Adir, and a little bit strange one. Real estate market is definitely a buzzword these days, not only here, but I think Europe-wide and globally, to the extent that there are some people who are tending to compare it with the cryptocurrencies market. These two are completely different. Cryptos are completely immaterial, difficult to predict, hardly even knows what everything is all about, whereas real estate is traditional, well-known, tangible, fixed, and everybody knows what it's all about. Somehow, both markets are moving up, crypto being extremely volatile, real estate being relatively stable. And when we talk about it, I would just like to ask Adir one question. Could you please elaborate on the factors which are currently underpinning such growth on the real estate market, both in Serbia and in Southeast European region, but I would say also in the total European region? And I'm more than looking to see what you have to say about the real estate market on the global level, because we think that, and I think that it's very interesting to try to understand what forces are currently behind the development of the real estate market beyond pure monetary forces.
Thank you. Actually, real estate is very similar, has a very similarity of behavior in different countries. As it, from its nature of being very, I would say, traditional type of investment or development, it's basically been affected by a few major factors that are similar to many countries, and of course to Serbia. The first and maybe one of the most important factors is demography. Basically, you as investor or developer, you need to create the character of, or to understand the demography of the country or the city you operated within, and to understand the income ability, the age, the gender, the race even, and the ability of these target groups of yours to consume the product in real estate that you are aiming, whether it is residential, offices, commercial, or whatever. So demography is one of the main factors. The other factor, of course, is the interest rate. On an environment of a low interest rate, it's a great boost to the real estate market. It increases the price, increases the demand, which increases the prices, and the cycle of the interest and the demands and supply, which is going on and upscaling. These days we are facing this situation in Serbia, and there is a direct link between that interest rate and the booming or growth of the real estate. The third factor is the economy situation. There is again a direct link due to between real estate and economy, stable economy, because of real estate being one of the main drivers of the economy, and therefore economy is related and linked to it in a very strong ties. Strong economy meaning strong real estate, and vice versa. The last factor, of course, there are some more, but I will mention only one more, which is the government policies. So the ability of the government to introduce incentives such as subsidies or taxation, lower taxation on the assets, drive the growth of the real estate to the extent.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's actually putting up a good basis for the next question, which I'm going to ask to Colonel Santini. Especially the last thing that Adir said about the government's intervention and their policies. In 2020, we had COVID. It took GDP down across the board for everybody. 2021, we had recovery. But if you look at the recovery rates, we're basically looking, most countries, to bringing the GDP at the level of 2019. So we had a low base for 2020. The GDP was leveled off to 2019 levels in 2021. Last year, on the other side, when you look at the economy, you had shortages. The production capacity is strained, logistics lines strained, inabilities of producers to respond to sharp rise of demand, and of course inflation. Yet, real estate business seems to be permanently growing. How do you explain this phenomenon? I mean, where does this resilience come from?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, I agree. Definitely, real estate is quite resilient, especially in stable macroeconomic environment. More or less, I would say in the region we had last 8 years quite stable environment. Okay, 2020 it was not, but as Adir said, we had subsidies, governmental central banks had their own interventions, so the main, let's say, expenditure and employment stayed on the stable level, so did not influence the real estate in any negative way. So I would say, besides stable environment, it's the fundamental is, I would say, for, let's say, for Belgrade office market, that we had quite smart developers that were building, I would say, just right stock, not to make oversupply. So in this way, they kept the rents stable and they kept the vacancy low. So the stock was growing at some, I would say, market pace. This meant that the growth was at the pace that is for the investor on the right level. Also, I would add that definitely we had a stimulus of EU funds, in the EU countries, and we had quantitative easing for the banks. So the banks had so much liquidity, they were looking for the good projects to invest in, which led to the low interest rates. And this also meant very attractive financial structures. So we as an investor, when we come to the financing bank, they give us quite attractive loan to value, hedged interest rate, fixed interest rate. So they are just giving you more and more incentives to invest. So I would say those were the main items why the real estate kept growing. But I would maybe differentiate in subclasses. I would say the logistics and residential are clear winners, because they're, especially for quality products, they were under supply. Office and retail, I would say they were stagnating, but also stayed stable. In office, we had a question about the business model. You know, because of the home office, would the office as it was before continue in that notion? Also the retail, how would the e-commerce influence retail parks and shopping centers? So I would say they were stagnating, and we had the hardest hit on the leisure industry, hospitality, especially the business hotels. I believe they are still under pandemic influence. It's gonna take some time for the MICE industry to come back. So more or less, I believe the growth will continue. What I would like to say that threats to this could be inflation, geopolitical circumstances, and probability that interest rates would go up.
Well, thank you very much. Listening to you, I'm going to start buying something. And now the banker, the guy who creates good construction models for you to borrow. Marko Brekic from Erste Group. The question is not going to be very complicated. It's almost very simple. I mean, since the crisis of 2008 up to 9, we had, during the whole COVID period, we had monetary authorities resorting to massive quantitative easing. During the COVID, authorities resorted to even fiscal stimulus and a massive package of fiscal stimuluses. It is something which Kruno just mentioned. Irrespective of everything, we had the reaction was an inflation in 2021. Now, we all know how the central banks react to inflation. They hike interest rates, they reduce quantitative easing. What do you think will be the reaction of central monetary institutions right now, assuming they resort to a standard model, which is austerity or cutting interest rates or in order to curb inflation? How will it impact the real estate market, and will it impact all asset classes the same? When I say all asset classes the same, I think office, residential, logistics, hospitality, and well, that's pretty much it. So what I would like at the end is to hear at least 1 or 2 year forward-looking thinking from you. Thank you very much. Very easy question.
Thank you for an easy question. But maybe you will allow me to go a step back to your other questions, which I found also very interesting.
Absolutely. I mean, you're free to comment on anything, but you have to answer my question at the end.
If not controversial, your first question, to compare real estate with, with crypto for me.
It was intentionally done.
Yes. And as such, it's a valid approach to begin defining on what we're talking about, real estate, to compare it to something else. You would have chosen something more softer, but okay, let's take the challenge. And I must say, I am in a certain love with real estate. I'm doing this for more than 20 years now. And I'm thinking, how do you come to this kind of idea to compare real estate, my beloved, with crypto? And I must say, you know, thinking about real estate, this thing, what we are financing or what you guys are developing is actually satisfying some basic human needs, like housing need, you know, residential. I mean, just tell me if anybody has a creative idea, what need does crypto satisfy? Office, we can have a discussion whether the need for office will stay the same as it was before Corona, if it will change, but definitely there is a need that it is satisfying, the need for working space, right? Retail, logistics, whatever. So there are concrete needs beside. So this is one distinction of real estate, of the asset class that we are here talking about today. And if compare it to other also, not only with crypto, that's a clear distinction. And the other, I would just like to say introductionary, if you look at the, well, we bankers always look at risk-return profile. I think with investors are always looking the same. I mean, there are words between the two asset classes, right? I mean, we're talking about something which is traditionally one of the most conservative asset classes in terms of risk and return also. And on the other spectrum, you have this crypto, which is the, I would say, completely speculative, but of course, it's also a controversial opinion of mine. So this is one thing I would say. We have assets that is satisfying concrete human needs, and we have a very conservative risk-return profile here. Now, why is the market in CEE, and particularly in Belgrade, growing? I think the answer for me actually comes from what I said before. There are concrete needs, concrete need for housing, need for working space. And we have a market here where these needs translating into market demand doesn't face the sufficient demand, supply on the other side. So I think that's the basic of market economy. We could just look at it here, and that's why the supply side is booming and is offering to the market what the market is demanding. So I think that would be my answer to the first two questions. And I don't see us coming to any peak here in terms of supply, just the opposite. I mean, whoever developer you talk, or if you want to rent some considerable office space in Belgrade now, you will see there is none on the market. Yeah, a lot of in development, and that's why supply will be going. Now, coming to your question, I don't have a crystal globe, obviously. Otherwise, I will, as you said before, I would be skiing in somewhere else. No, I like Kopernik very much. It's a very nice skiing resort. I think we have another crisis on our front door, which we still can't assess. We don't know we don't know how far this will further develop. I'm talking about the war in Ukraine, obviously. Completely new one. We just hope to exit from one crisis, we're going to another one. So how we will react, how the governments will react, how the national banks will react is something I think at the moment we can only speculate. So I think it's the time to wait rather for us than to speculate. So that's the first answer. But coming to your question, if we would have a change in the macroeconomic policy in terms of quantitative easing and in terms of low interest rates, what would that mean for the market we are talking here about? Well, my answer would still be the same as before. We have a chronically undersupplied market in Belgrade, if you talk about Belgrade. Okay, not maybe chronically undersupplied. There was a lot of development in the last 15 years, but there is still a very strong demand. And we've seen a big shock in the last years. We discussed it before. The increase of construction material prices, the increase of the cost of new developments. Did that suppress the market? No. We saw that the demand is still so strong. The market is so healthy in that respect that it's still growing. So financing obviously plays a major role here. Not only the conditions, the terms of financing, but the very fact, is there financing? Is the financing available? And as I said before, I don't have the crystal globe here, but I would say as long as we talk about increase of rates by a few percentage points, I expect almost zero effect on the Belgrade market, and that's a controversial opinion here. Why? The sub-segment of the market that is usually here, the residential one, I think will not be hit for one particular reason, Belgrade being a particular market. To my understanding at least, the overwhelming majority of buyers of apartments in Belgrade are equity buyers. So people having cash and buying apartments, not people going to the bank and taking mortgage loan and then depend on whether they will still be able to service that loan. So I don't see the big impact of increased interest rates. And second thing is, when talk about residential market now, and second thing is that those who take the banking loan, the leverages are rather conservative. So we have a very healthy situation here too. I think what might happen is something else. If you have a more expensive financing, then not everybody can come to idea to develop a real estate. Then only those will survive who also have equity bases. Because once the financing is more expensive, your leverage needs to be lower in order to have a business case. So we might have even some positive effect that some of the market participants who are sometimes developing not necessarily the most sustainable projects will not be able to do so. So that's my take. I see, apart from the crisis on our doorstep in the East, as I said, that's a very tragic and very unpredictable. Actually, it's absolutely unpredictable. But apart of that, I see Belgrade market in particular as one with great future for the next more than 2 years.
Thank you very much. This was very professionally elaborated and very positive. And I have to say I'm very happy to hear that. There are certain elements of it I disagree with, but nonetheless, I will not go into discussion at this point of time. I will leave this to you because I'm the moderator. And what I want to ask Peja Petronijević, which is something which I think is going to be a significant game changer in this industry. It already is, and it might become here in the region. And we're witnessing the sharp growth of funds being invested in companies that conform to environment, social, and governance criteria. And it's ESG criteria investments, and I checked, it's not billions, it's trillions. The total amount of investments from 2018 to 2020 grew from 12 trillion to 20 trillion USD, which is our billions, yes. Irrespective of the fact that there were a lot of non-ECG compliant companies who outperformed the ECG compliant market. Still, the ECG compliant market grew faster in terms of volume and quantity than the rest of the market. Obviously, that makes a big impact. And I think it will make big impact in the real estate sector. And I know that we discussed it before, but you already had a real life experience with tenants regarding the environmental impacts and ESG criteria. Would you be so kind to elaborate to a certain extent what is that impact and what that impact could be on the overall regional market, because you're now operating not only in Serbia, you're working throughout Eastern Europe?
Thank you for the question. Look, I'm pretty sure that a lot of bookstores outperformed Amazon at the beginning, you know, when he started. So I think that this is the way that the whole thing is going. And ESG is strongly influencing the real estate market in the last couple of years. Very much you said yourself how big is the increase. I must say I don't know, you know, how it started, and especially having in mind, you know, I thought that humankind finally developed the conscience that we need to do something with the world, with the planet, with ourselves, between ourselves. But then you have a look at a COVID situation, which every country was for itself basically. Then you have a look at war in Ukraine, war in other parts of the world. So you are questioning why is that happening, but it's actually happening. I mean, I can't remember when was the last time that an institutional investor or tenant or a client was didn't ask us for our ESG policies. I mean, according to a couple of research by Pricewaterhouse, KPMG, CBRE, about 83% of participants in real estate industry, starting from construction to developers, have their ESG policies, and this is a huge number. I mean, also about 40% of annual global carbon emission comes from real estate, 28%, if I'm not mistaken, from operational activities, another 11-12% from production of the materials that come to that. So this is quite a big percentage that belongs to the real estate industry. So yes, everybody now is having their ESG policies. Everybody is going for certifications, green certification. This is we started that long time ago. This is, you have different standards. You have LEED, you have BREEAM, you have German standards, which are now in place. And it's all I mean, in GTC, about 90%, 85 to 90% of the projects are basically certified, yeah, and this does increase the costs, does increase the time, but also on a long run increases the value or keeps the value of the project on the same level. The projects which are not certified, they are quite decaying in a value and in a rent and in everything. There is also a very nice report, okay, I'm not going to advertise whose, but 10 main things about ESG policies, where you can see actually the rent growth compared to the different certification level. And you are talking about 2 to 3% on average from level to level, which is not little when you come when you come from 0 to, I don't know, LEED Platinum. So it piles up to quite a number. And the last, but not the last, but one of the also important things is the financial market. I mean, you have even Serbia has a green bond market, and we discussed this over lunch. There are other bonds and there are green bonds. Basically, everybody is going for a green bonds now, and I do believe that this prefix green will soon disappear from, so all the bonds which are there will be green bonds. And this is something which is ongoing and which is, you know, it's inevitable, and which is good, you know, which is good for the industry, which is good for the planet, which is good for everyone. And I think, you know, these are the things that you will, if you want to do a good project now, you need to do it according to ESG policies, and you need to certify it properly, and you need not to do only by yourself, but together with your tenants. So you need to involve your tenants into it, you need to have a cooperation with them, they need to know what is the maximum average consumption, what is the, how the air conditioning works, all these things, and they do agree on most of this stuff.
It is cleared for me a lot of questions which I had. I would like to continue on the same level and add one more question to Adir. In this change from the primer production, let's say, from the cement plant to the end user, somebody who leases office or buys an apartment, everybody is adding to contamination. The real estate, you're basically at the end of the line. You're accumulating all this contamination, which is previously coming up and expressing it in ESG criteria. My question is, and partially Peja answered it, this will become more or less a standard. What is the difference between the international and the local companies in this area? Is there anything that the government of Serbia, in terms of supporting green construction, green ESG factors, ESG rating, and even issuing an ESG-rated bonds could do to increase the relevance of the market. We know it's relevant for Microsoft, for instance, that we need it to become relevant for the general part of the economy. And it's very, very difficult, and that's why I'm asking you, because I have no idea about it. And I have one more question. And we mentioned 2 times the war in Ukraine. And I told you I was going to ask you this. What is your opinion? How is the war in Ukraine going to impact the real estate market?
Okay, so for the first topic of ESG policies and implementation in Serbia and other countries, so definitely if I take Israel as an example for a very developed real estate segment, you cannot today lease a building, a Class A or Class B building, to any multinational company or even local company in Israel that doesn't have a certification in place and justify the process. Like you said, that definitely real estate or development of a project involves all segments of our life, from the cement factory through the drivers, transportation, logistics, financing, and so on and so forth, until the final product that we are stepping, touching, and using. Therefore, in countries like Israel, this is a must. It goes without saying. In Serbia, I'm here for many years, so I'm following, and in a way, a bit contributing to the development of this wonderful country. I can say that it's still on its virginity. Yes, I'm sharing the same opinion like Peja and Bruno, that all our projects, or most of our projects, are certified. But definitely it's a trend that we are facing in the last couple of years, and not too many of them, not too many years back. But the requirements are there, and the multinational corporations that are coming are definitely involved from day one in your way of developing your asset. If they are lucky to come at the beginning, they are very much involved. If they are leasing or buying a premises which is ready, then of course they accept what you provide them. But this will be a must. We made, in our company in AFI, we made a survey with the Ipsos organization, and basically it showed us that the new generation of employees is very much into those things. It's one of the first things that they clicked like a want and required and a must, basically. So we have to comply with that. I mean, the world is changing all around us, from ESG perspective, and also from your second question, circumstances. You know, it's a very volatile world. We are facing now unfortunate situation in Ukraine, I mean war in Ukraine. And of course there will be some influence on the market. I'm not that smart to say if this influence will be positive or negative. I think it's too early to assess it. My opinion is that the forces or the drivers behind this war are much bigger than the war itself, and therefore we will face some long-term circumstances that will influence all our operation, not only in real estate, but definitely on all our sectors and segments of our economical life, if I may say, or even more than that. I hope I answered the question.
You do, thank you very much. We'll move now to Marco again. I have to skip the 2 guys because I have a question for them at the end. And Marco, what I'm going to ask you is related to ESG criteria. We talked about it during the lunch, but I think the audience should hear it. To what extent these criteria play a role in structuring financing for a project? Do compliant companies and companies who adhere to those criteria have advantages in loan approvals, interest rates, conditions, and how is it actually embedded into your loan decisions?
Yeah, I mean, it's impressive to hear from the client side, from developer side, that this obviously plays a very important role. Actually, as far as I understand, there is no new development or no new lease to some prominent international tenant without observing the ESG criteria. Now, from the bank side, I would say two sides of the question. One is the banks, the prudent bank, would go for sustainability We don't go for fast money, we go for sustainable investments in sustainable products, projects, and ESG is definitely targeting and addressing this need for sustainability. I would put on record this is one of the biggest needs of a bank doing business, of a commercial bank. Sustainability of investments, assets that where we are investing. So yes, we are looking favorably into any project that is developing its sustainability quality. But even more, and this is probably not surprising, but it's maybe controversial, maybe more we are reacting to what we have to do, to what the authorities tell us we have to do. And maybe you know, maybe not, European Banking Authority, EBA, is issued rules of the game, so to speak, here. And Erste is observing those rules, and we apply fully since last year, July, the rule that there is no new financing, particularly in real estate, without ESG rating. Yeah? So since last July, if you come to Erste and you want a project whereby we have a threshold of 20 million now, we're still in transitionary period. If you do not provide to us information that we need in order to produce ESG rating, we will not be able to finance you. So what I'm saying is obviously quite direct impact. Now, did we develop this from our own internal belief that we need that, or was this rather imposed from the authorities? This remains for everybody to interpret, but it is there definitely. And it will go further. From this summer, we are not only targeting new financings, we will also be obliged to make ESG rating for the existing financing, so it goes further. Yeah. Another thing is Erste per se has set to ourselves a target, a short term, 2026, it's in 4 years, to have 25% of our total corporate lending book green. So if you tomorrow come to us with a project which is not green in our view, we will have less chance because we will not be contributing to our achieving of that goal also. Yeah. So obviously there is other prohibitive nature of the story at the moment, rather than some particular motivation for going to ESG. It's rather prohibitive one. If you are not complying with this, you will have difficulty to develop, to finance. Yeah. The question now is, what if other effects does this green or ESG labeling have? Yeah. Are we able, and this is what the clients are always asking, are we able to offer a cheaper financing if you are green and ESG compliant? And as you might all know, all the banks and bonds are nowadays green bonds. We have green loans, and we are very much capable, and we are doing green loans. Yeah, but the question is, what are the current immediate results of those green products, aside of labeling them green? Are there any more favorable financing terms and conditions? And in this respect, yes, there are, but they are rather symbolical, and they will remain symbolical as long as banks will not have the possibility to mirror these lower financing rates or margins with lower cost. And that's the issue we have at the moment. We do not have any initiative, any motivation for the banks yet to offer on the economic side, yeah, on the real calculative side, to offer a better financing terms, because there are no green incentivizing benefits for the banks in terms of equity we have to reserve for this kind of financings. So I think we are in a transitionary period. We see in which direction the train is going. We see that European Union has proclaimed this goal of 2050 to be green. We are moving that direction, and there are quite concrete effects on the market currently in terms of whether you are compliant with ESG or not. No.
Thank you very much. So the answer is binary, I suppose. If you're non-ESG compliant, forget it. If you're ESG compliant, you're going to get a loan. The conditions are pretty much going to be the same because you cannot refinance at a lower rate. But in turn, that will create a whole new range of products on the market. As far as I can see, pretty much everything will be labeled green, and as Peja said, ultimately this label will at some point of time disappear because this will be heavily embedded in the structure of a product. For Peja, I have a little bit, it's a difficult question. I mean, we're witnessing a spiral growth of residential and construction supply, but we're also witnessing spiraling growing prices. Are we looking into a potential bubble? And will this bubble burst right into our faces, or are there any possibilities for, let's say, a controlled touchdown or controlled deflation of the bubble? Or is there a bubble at all?
Yeah, that's the question. I mean, I've been unfortunately, in this industry for a long time to see that there are cycles in the industry. So you can call it a cycle or a bubble. It just depends how low it will go after reaching a peak. Yeah, there will be probably a black swan event at one point in time, and then, you know, the things will go down. It has to, I mean, it cannot climb all the time. So, you know, if I knew to answer that question, I also probably not be sitting here as Marco. So, but I don't know if, look, at the moment, the prices, okay, residential is one side. I mean, residential, typically, people like to invest in residential because they want to feel secure. And okay, if you're looking at let's say Balkan region that we are talking about, traditionally here, the only asset class that people invest whatever they have is brick and mortar. Yeah, it's residential, and they will put their money in there rather than in bonds, stock, crypto. Look, crypto, if you bought Bitcoins 10 years ago, crypto could also provide you with an apartment, office, and everything, you know. So it's not, but it's a bit more volatile. This is more stable, and you can count on that. And you know that prices eventually will reach that level. Prices now are way above the prices in 2008 and 9 when the crisis hit, yeah. And when the balloon burst in our face and everything, now the prices are way much higher than that. So I do expect that at one point in time you will have something happening and then it will go down. I don't expect, I think we learned all from the previous, as discussed from the previous stuff, that it will not just drop down. But on the other, on the offices, on the logistics, on the, okay, retail not so much, but look, technology is moving up. So offices are factories of the future. I mean, this is, you don't have as many workers. I mean, you have 10% of workers in the factory as you had like 20 years ago. So these people will have to work somewhere. So I don't think that the offices or that kind of stuff, and you have logistics, which is going to move the goods all over the place. So I don't think that these ones are going to drop as steep as residential. I think it's going to maybe level, maybe stay there. I mean, yeah, the prices are going up, but also the rents are going up. It's not that different to like 2 years ago. So, you know, I do expect some kind of a downward trend, but not that much.
Kruno, by sheer chance here and by my invitation, we have Mr. Kruno Santini, who represents Indotech, and also represents a buyer. And we have Mr. Peja Petronijevic, who represents GTC, or a seller. They closed the transaction last year, I think. Never mind how much. It's for them to say. Had the transaction happened in 2023, do you think the price will be higher, lower, or the same? You're also allowed to respond that if you knew the answer to that question, you certainly wouldn't sit here.
Yeah, very interesting question. I would say we definitely need to compare the market circumstances in 2021 and 2023. So I would say in 2023, in my view, the most important circumstance is that we can now see that we had this wait and see in office segment. How will this home office new reality develop? So in my view, I think this is now over. We can see that the flexible office that can be adjusted, that brings a value to the tenant. It's usually class I, it's on the prime location, it has fantastic accessibility. It will survive. It will survive and it will come as before in 2019. So I believe this is the major. At 2021, it was still, you don't know in which side it's gonna prevail. So I would say this would be a positive development in 2023. Also, I would say that this portfolio that we are talking about is, I would say, almost entirely ESG compliant. This is in 2023 much more important than in 2021, because I believe in 2023 you will not even be able to get financing if it's not ESG compliant. So I believe that now there will be a gap on the market between those ESG compliant portfolio and the buildings that are not. Also, maybe not so. It's not going to be much influence, but I believe that also in some new offices that came last year, they had higher construction costs per square meter. So if you had a property built 5-6 years ago, you are in a different situation. You have more negotiation power than them. So they are. Yeah. So definitely you are on competitive level. You are more competitive than them. Negative development, I would say maybe the interest rate would go a bit up, and this inflation could, maybe not in short term, but in some middle term, it will raise service charge. It will maybe the wages will go up. So I think maybe the profit margin of the tenant will go thinner. So I don't think you can negotiate higher rent. But all together, I believe the positive developments are stronger. And I believe in 2023, this portfolio would be a bit more expensive. So with a low yield, I would say maybe 0.25. So it would be a bit pricier for the buyer in 2023.
Thank you very much for a concrete question. Now, please, Peja.
If I may add, yeah, you also have to take into consideration this was the first big transaction of the commercial, office development in Serbia. So I think this is a kind of a benchmark, and I think that the yield is going to go down from there, whatever happens, because you'll have this will attract new investors. I'm pretty sure that soon we'll see a few more transactions at a lower yield than that one. So Adir, you're welcome. Yeah.
If I may just add, and to add to Kruno and to Peja, first to correct you, Peja, a bit, it's not the first, the second one, because we bought our partners out in Airport City, but nevertheless, it's a different thing. Just to say, if you ask me, from my perspective, if the price would go higher in 2023 for this transaction, definitely yes. Not having in mind what's going on all around us. I mean, war in Ukraine, which is a factor. We have to assess that factor and put it in the risk calculation of us. I'm not sure that there will be an immediate effect on the real estate market in Serbia. I still foresee the increase of pricing, leasing prices, selling prices of apartment, and so on. About the yield, you mentioned 0.25. I would expect much better improvement of the yield of appraisals, and because definitely the yields today do not reflect the strength or the type of properties which were built in the last 10 to 12 years in Belgrade, and I would expect a better return over there.
This partially answers, thank you very much, this partially answers the last question which I had for everybody, and then we can have questions from the public, and it's very simple. Bearish or bullish, and why? But let's start with you, Adil, although you just said it.
Okay, it's a tough question, you know.
Yeah, I know it's a tough question.
You need to be a prophet. I wouldn't sit here if I could tell you the exact answer, but definitely we need to get used to a very volatile surrounding that will affect us, and it's going to be more and more often, unfortunately. But I think that the real estate sector, as a sector in almost in every country, is very traditional. We mentioned that, all of us mentioned this fact that it's a traditional and very secured or safe haven to a lot of not only investors, but a lot of private people that basically seeking for the right alternative for their money. In real estate, you can leverage your investment very easily, relatively cheap. For 20–30% of your equity, you will leverage it. So basically, you can enjoy cash flow if you rent it. So it's quite easy, I would say, decision to go for real estate than to bonds or than to stocks, which are very sensitive for volatile situations such as what we're facing today. So I believe that this will always be the runaway or the escape, the best escape for those investors or those private individuals that really would like to invest their own, the last euro that they have in their pocket, and to feel safe. It's a kind of a guarantee.
Ultimately, what you're saying is you earn money in crypto and then you park it in real estate. Am I right?
This would be ideal, to earn there, to invest it over there.
Kruno.
Yeah, I would say definitely bullish. I think it's the nature of the segment of the industry. So if there is a saying, if you are not a net buyer, what are you doing here? I would agree on this. So I think we as Indotech, we believe in the real estate market. We believe in the region. I only think that you need to be careful how to structure a portfolio. So you definitely need to diversify, to have different subclasses. You don't need to be exposed to only one. So if you have logistics, you have part of office, you have retail shopping centers, retail parks, also regional. We are as Indotech, we are now covering 14 countries. So even if some country or some subclass would come to some kind of, I would say, stagnation or some kind of decrease, there are some other classes that will be growing. So on the portfolio level, I would think it's gonna be balancing. But definitely, I believe we will continue to buy. The only problem now is there is not much supply. Maybe just an example. It's from Croatia. I was talking to one landowner of the office building. We was trying to acquire it, and I would say, okay, it's in Zagreb. The market level is like 7.5 yield, and the guy was asking 5. And then later on, we were sitting having a drink. I was asking, okay, how did you come to this 5% yield? He said, I'm trying to sell it at this, I would say, wish. This is my wishful amount, because I don't have anywhere to put this. Even if you give me this hypothetical 20 million, I don't have any other opportunity to put. I will have negative interest in the bank. So if I'm exiting, I want to exit much more expensive. So that's unfortunately in the region, because development cycle was quite slow. So we would like to buy, but currently there is undersupply. But I hope that the pace of the market will continue as it was in the previous years.
Thank you very much. Marco, or do you want to answer the last?
Sorry?
Or you want to be the last? Go on, please.
Was this now me?
No, Marco, please.
No, I would say, depending on the asset class, I would be very to moderately bullish. Industrial logistics centers, I think this is where Serbia is really chronically undersupplied. So this is, I think, we all expect a lot of happening, a lot of developments in the next years. Office, retail, I would say bullish. Hotels, yeah, I think stable. And residential, I would say, would like to distinguish there, because particularly Belgrade, I noticed there is a particular sub-market where people invested and are not putting those apartments to any usage, but just block their capital and leave those apartments empty. So this is purely speculative part of the residential. I would say that one I would be careful, because the prices there are just well, artificial in extreme sense. But the rest of residential also very bullish.
Very much. Peja, unfortunately, you're the last, but
No, but I think I already said. I think we would go bullish on Serbia, definitely on offices, possibly logistics, stuff like that. But I do think that there is great undersupply in Serbia market of these asset classes. Also on residential, with with a proper tax policy from the government, which is being discussed and everything. I mean, you could bring digital nomads. You could do. There is a life in Belgrade which is great. I mean, you know, it's look at what I mean. I'm not comparing Belgrade to Dubai. At one point in time, in the next couple of years, maybe. But look at what Dubai did with these things. So I think that also residential is not that extra, you know, developed. There is still place to do that. So, but on all the other asset classes, definitely bullish.
well, thank you very much, gentlemen. We've exhausted our list of questions. I'm not sure we exhausted the time. I think we're quite punctual. And I'd like to thank all the panelists for participation and for very straightforward answers. I think the questions were very to moderately, as Marco would say, difficult. Some of them quite simple. And now I want to open the floor to our audience, to some of them who are here. If there are any questions, please go ahead. If not, okay, thank you very much.